What's up YouTube, this is Gresnick and welcome back to another reaction video. Today we'll be reacting to Film Theory, The Moon Woke Up. What? The Moon Woke Up is Your Worst Nightmare. I've watched the whole series of The Moon Woke Up whenever I wasn't capable of uploading for a good 2 weeks. So, I already know what the analog horror, I think it's an analog horror, is, but I'm excited for Film Theories' theory on it. As always, like and subscribe to Film Theorist and myself, and let's get into this.
Is here with The Moon Woke Up, a brand new analog horror series that is not only one of the most creative stories I've ever seen told here on YouTube, but also one of the biggest and most ambitious. And if things go as they are, it's only gonna get more terrifying. Hello Internet, welcome to Film Theory, the show that's always orbiting your subscription feed. Though it looks like we're about to crash into the planet, quick, subscribe to make sure the videos don't get destroyed on impact. So, loyal theorists, I always try to keep an eye out for any analog horror series that might cross my feed, whether that's here on YouTube, Reddit, or Instagram. At Forest First, by the way, drop me a follow and send me any cool series that you find. And boy, oh boy, let me tell you, I got really excited when I saw this one pop up. A creepy, horrific face plastered on a celestial body staring down at Earth? Yes, please. That is exactly the sort of thing that I dig, personally.
Yay,
and
cosmic
it's the
horror.
perfect sort of horror to theorize about. This is The Moon Woke Up, a series created by Mr. Friend right here on YouTube.com, all about a world where, well, the moon is woken up. Some eldritch entity has taken control of the moon and other celestial bodies as well, and caused our closest cosmic neighbor to smash into the planet, wreaking havoc on the world's population. Now, the survivors are trying to figure out why this has happened, as well as survive the destruction of the world as we know it. It looks like Mr. Friend has actually been making these sort of horror animations for a while now. I actually remember some of them popping up on my feed randomly, but The Moon Woke Up is absolutely his biggest hit yet, with the first video having a staggering 28 million views and rising. And man, I can see why these videos took off. Because he uses tools like Blender, Mr. Friend is able to capture a really uncanny visual style while still feeling grounded. And honestly, big analog horror annoying orange style faces on planets make for great thumbnails. But even beyond that, as the series has continued and gotten bigger and better, it's mixed in satirical comedy with the horror, creating something akin to Starship Troopers or Helldivers.
Citizen, need a friend?
It's also expanded its story, going from a creepy VHS found footage video to an epic that spans literal star systems, and because of that, there are tons of mysteries packed into the series, mysteries that you know that we have to try and solve. So that's exactly what we're gonna do today, loyal theorists. We're going to break down exactly what's happening in this story, try to put together all of the pieces spread out across the 7 episodes released so far, and see if we can use them to figure out where the story is going. And if I'm right, The Moon Woke Up is going to get much bigger before the end of things. But just how big? Mythologically big. So put on your robot arm and drink your moon juice, loyal theorists, as we shoot into The Moon Woke Up. The Moon Woke Up begins with some astronauts on their way to the moon, and given the timeline we're given just a little bit later in the series, it's likely that these characters are meant to be the Apollo 11 crew, including Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and/or Michael Collins, the first people to walk on the moon. However, as they approach, 2 dark spots open on the surface, a pair of eyes gazing out at Earth before a gaping mouth opens.
What the hell is that?
Suddenly, the moon hurtles towards Earth, crashing into the planet somewhere in Africa. In a later video, we're shown just how devastating this is, ending billions of lives instantly and destroying much of Europe and Asia. But that isn't the end of things. The planets Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus have also woken up and approached the Earth as the video ends. Episode 2 then begins with a flashback to shortly before the impact. A man walks down the streets of New York, coming across a doomsayer explaining that there are chosen ones all over the world being transformed.
The awakened ones will soon be here.
Clearly, by the awakened ones, he's talking about the planets. But we get to see an example of a chosen one immediately after this. We cut to the UK, where we find a child drawing pictures of the planets with their creepy faces. And when he turns to face his father,
I have to tell you one more time.
His face is the same grotesque one we see on the moon and the planets. This must be a chosen one. Finally, we are taken to Namibia, where we see a cult worshipping the moon, having carved the moon's face into the ground. Clearly, there's some weird analog horror goodness happening here, whether it be through some sort of telepathy, or radiation, or magic, or sci-fi shenanigans. People on Earth can be controlled or taken over by these awakened ones. Real talk though, I have to imagine that more than a few necks got hurt looking up at the moon here.
Like, yeah, this is not a natural angle. I can already feel my neck and back starting to ache, but that's not a problem thanks to today's sponsor, ZocDoc.
So, I hurt my back
Oh,
earlier
no, it's a
this
sponsor.
year, and it was by sleeping. Yes, I'm in my 30s, how could you tell? So, of course I'm gonna hurt my back looking up at the moon.
And trying to find a specialist to help out with the problem, just afraid a doctor today. Thanks again to ZocDoc for sponsoring today's theory.
Yep.
Now let's jump back into The Moon Woke Up. We then jump forward 5 years after the impact, and things are bad, with billions dead and millions starving. And worst of all, basically all water has dried up.
The estimated death toll stands at 3.2 million, with nearly 90% of Earth's population wiped out, and our major oceans having all but dried up.
Fun fact, those numbers are actually correct for the population in 1969. There were about 3.6 billion people on the planet at the time, 90% of which would be 3.2, so good on you, Mr. Friend. Anyway, things aren't much better by episode 3, where 10 years have passed since the impact. Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus have surrounded the Earth, but haven't really done anything hostile towards us. It's at this point that I would like to point out that the gravity of these massive planets being so close would absolutely wreak havoc on the Earth, but that might be the least of our worries. And it seems like Mr. Friend might have actually considered this.
Our new celestial neighbors continue to hover some 9 million kilometers from Earth, just shy of the Lagrange-influenced disturbance zone.
Yeah, so the Lagrange-influenced disturbance zone is a real scientific concept. Now, this is very simplified, but basically, this is the area between large gravitational bodies where an object will find equilibrium. Basically, it won't be pulled towards any of the other objects, so Earth here is kind of just stuck in the middle of space. Finally, the area around the moon's impact site is now known as the Umbra Zone and has thousands of kilometers of land that is dangerously irradiated. This is just not a place you want to be. All the efforts to keep life on Earth going are being spearheaded by the Frontline Research Initiative for Earth's New Defense, or FRIEND Industries. We love a good acronym. FRIEND is being backed by basically every world leader and government that's still alive, basically making them the de facto ruling body of the surviving population. According to episode 4, they're also the largest employer on Earth now, with popular programs in weapons development, water reclamation, marine corps, and human repopulation. The last one is incredibly popular, as you'd imagine. Anyway, FRIEND attempted to launch several probes to investigate the planets of Jupiter and Saturn, though not Uranus, because
Naturally, nobody wants to get close to Uranus.
of course, things don't go quite to plan, as the probes launched are destroyed by several of Jupiter and Saturn's moons, all of which are awakened that fly out of the planet's mouths. It's just truly creepy stuff, and it looks like humanity is going to be stuck here for a long while. Anyway, we then cut to the point of view of a FRIEND Industries Marine with a cool robot arm as his squad is heading into the Umbra Zone around the moon. We get a ton of world building here about how the outside world functions, about a growing worldwide black market, and the fact that people are still being turned into chosen ones like we saw earlier in the series.
Put your masks on. Don't want the radiation turning you into one of those moon-fected.
First it was the cosmic frequency turning you into one of those. Now it's the radiation. It's all bollocks.
Yeah, this is definitely a giant thread they're going to be pulling later in the series. But before we get more of this, the group are attacked by a pair of these moon-fected. One of them just looks like a normal person, while the other is tall, lanky. It's lost most of its human characteristics. It kind of looks like a humanoid moon, doesn't it? It's unclear what's going on here. Like, is this taller one an alien? Or someone who's gotten, like, more infected? Or someone who's just been infected longer? If I had to guess, it's probably that last one. I'd bet that the longer you're infected, the more you turn into one of these creatures. But before the POV character can be killed by the monster attacking him, a huge light appears in the sky. A void opens up in the space behind Jupiter, and a giant hand reaches out, plucking it out of the sky. Wait, what? Yeah, crazy. Episode 5 gives us another point of view of this event, as other hands reach out and also take Saturn and Uranus, seemingly ending the threat. Though not without the deaths of a few innocent innocent friend astronauts. Of course, this absolutely freaks everyone out, understandably so.
After years of chaos and uncertainty, what we once thought to be our greatest peril has been eclipsed.
But Friend takes advantage of this and declares the situation to be safe. 150 years now pass, and by the 2130s, humanity has started to thrive again. Under Friend's leadership, incredible leaps have been made in technological development, like a giant wall has been placed around the Umbra Zone, cities have been rebuilt, space stations now orbit the planet, protecting us from asteroids that used to get sucked in by the gas giants, and Friend has even started building a space gate around one of the rifts that the giant hands came out of. But despite Friend's efforts pulling humanity back from the brink of extinction, I'm skeptical that their intentions are entirely pure. We see that they're performing experiments on living human test subjects that are certainly going to be painful. Like, I don't want to know what they were going to do with that chainsaw, dude. We also see a lot of people locked up in a Friend pin while screaming in the background during the Secret Tapes merch ad. And back in episode 2, the Doomsayer in New York calls himself Mr. Friend. To be fair, this is the name of the creator of the series, and friend is a common enough word, but it was a connection that I couldn't help notice. But the most worrying thing of all to me is how they've been using moon juice. Yeah, I've been trying to find the best place to put this, but a recurring element here in the series has been a sort of radioactive, glowing pink liquid that seems to be coming out of the moon. We see rats eating the stuff, puddles of it in the Umbra Zone, and most concerningly, vats of it being used in Friend experiments. And in this far future, they've even built a giant structure on the moon to extract it. This stuff is what's powering all of the incredible technology in this future, but some people believe that it's causing the Chosen One mutations.
Nah, it's gotta be that moon juice, mate.
And in this same scene, this guy also says that there's an entire black market selling this stuff, which Friend is calling
Element 75U.
Now, if you know anything about chemistry, you'll know that putting the word element with a number can give us a lot of information. Yeah, you know how elements on the periodic table are given an atomic number, and that's how they're ordered? So like hydrogen is element 1, gold is element 79, etc., etc. These atomic numbers represent how many protons are in the element, and the higher the number, the heavier the element. Anyway, element 75 is known as rhenium, and of course, I had to dig into this stuff to see if there was anything we could learn about the moon juice from the element, and honestly, what I found? Well, there's a lot that doesn't line up, and a lot that is kind of interesting. So, rhenium is a solid metal. It's usually gray and not glowing pink goo. It's also a stable element and rarely dangerously radioactive, so not particularly close to the moon juice there either. It's also one of the rarest metals found on Earth, but interestingly, there seems to be even less of it on the moon. So, like, it's strange that there be so much of it here in the series, right? Well, maybe, but given some things we find out later in the series, the planetary body in The Moon Woke Up might have had way more than the moon because of other circumstances. All that being said, this may just be a case of a creator choosing a cool, sciencey sounding phrase for their mysterious moon juice in their lighthearted sci-fi horror series. But hey, it's always fun to explore the options and learn a little bit, right? Anyway, we see the results of Friend's experiments of the moon juice on human subjects in episode 5. They inject a human candidate with the stuff, and all of a sudden, he's able to use tech powered by the moon juice to destroy one of the Grey Chosen Ones. It's crazy stuff, man. Oh, and also, the person we see here in this point of view is almost certainly the same Marine we see earlier in the series with the robot arm. They mention that he's being woken up from some sort of like cryogenic stasis, and
Defrosting at 95%, sir.
well, he only has one arm. It seems like a weird detail that they'd add to this character when there's already been another character exactly like this earlier on, and they give him a new robot arm in this scene. I like fully expect him to become a recurring character later in the series, maybe one of the astronauts in one of the future episodes, but hey, we'll get there. Which brings us to episodes 6 and 7, which are probably the most ambitious to date. Like, the series is turning into legit science fiction with an interstellar plot. Here we follow several astronauts as they open the Void Gate and travel through it, but they're not alone. Neptune awakens and chases after them, destroying one of the ships and forcing them to exit the void around an alien planet. Here we see a large tentacled monster orbiting a planet as it pulls a moon from its gaping maw and puts it in orbit around the alien world. Apparently, these things visited our solar system in 10,000 BC, destroying the Earth's moon and replacing it with their awakened one, along with the gas giants. Anyway, the tentacled monster then approaches Neptune and sticks its tentacles into its eyes before another one of those massive hands appears and grabs it. One of the surviving spaceships follows the hand, while our point of view follows the tentacle monster as it leaves the solar system, though they're attacked by dozens and dozens of awakened awakened moons, forcing them out of hyperspace and into the orbit of another alien planet, this one with signs of life and 2 moons stuck to its surface, just like Earth. So that's the story so far. Well, unless you count a video called Secret Tapes. This video's great and funny, by the way, go watch it, but it's really more of an ad for Mr. Friend's merch than anything else. Oh, and speaking of, we here at Theorist have heard your feedback and brought back some classic feeling theory wear with a couple of hoodies and shirts and socks. Like the black hoodie is my absolute favorite. I need to get my hands on one of these like right now. So please go to theoryverse.store if you want to check any of that out. Shameless shilling aside though, what's really going on here in The Moon Wakes Up? Why are the planets and moons looming over Earth? Why did the moon crash into the planets? What are these giant hands that pulled the planets away and the weird tentacle monsters? Being real, we need more episodes and information before we can get some definitive answers. But I do believe we can use an unexpected source to potentially get some answers. And that source? Greek and Roman mythology. You probably know that most of the planets are named after gods from Roman mythology. In fact, it's such a strong tradition, it's borderline a rule that planets in our solar system must be named after said gods. And if you didn't know, Roman mythology was basically like Greek myth fanfics, with most of its deities adapted from their Greek counterparts. Zeus became Jupiter, Poseidon became Neptune, Hades became Pluto, but you got demoted, so we're not talking about you. Get out of here. The only exception there is Uranus, who was named after the Greek version of that god instead of Caelus, which was the Roman version. I'm guessing they just had to let school kids get in their jokes about looking at Uranus. Hats off to you, scientific community. Anyway, because these names were used to name the planets, I believe that we can look at Greek and Roman mythology to potentially work out where this story is going, or at least try to get an idea of why it's all happening in the first place. Hey, listen, it's a cryptic analog horror series with short uploads. We gotta take what we can get in terms of info. So, what can we learn by looking at myths? Oh, and just for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to use the names that are actually on the planets in place of the gods here, just so things, you know, aren't confusing. Well, of all the planets we've seen wake up, they were all powerful leaders in some regard. Jupiter was obviously the leader of the Roman pantheon, Saturn was the leader of the Titans, the predecessors of the gods, and Uranus was a primordial god who helped create the Titans. Neptune's the only real outlier here, though he was also considered a very powerful god in the pantheon, brother of Jupiter and king of the oceans. But something else interesting I found in my research, there's a strange recurring motif in these ancient myths of these gods having a relationship with and then coming into conflict with the god representing Earth, Gaia. Stick with me here. See, Uranus and Gaia gave birth to the Titans, which included Saturn, but Uranus hated them and hid them away. This understandably peeved Gaia, who helped Saturn step up and defeat Uranus. But Saturn feared that his children would do the same and ate his kids to prevent it. The old mythology is really weird, guys. This was only stopped when Gaia helped Jupiter hide and eventually overthrow Saturn and the other Titans. But then Gaia turned around again and was upset at Jupiter for imprisoning her children, the Titans, giving birth to the giants to defeat the gods. Neptune then took Jupiter's side, also putting him at odds with Gaia, at least at that time. Man, following myths from this time really feels like we're watching a wrestling storyline, doesn't it? So think about this. All of the planets named after gods that had beef with Gaia, who represents the Earth, suddenly wake up and try to stop Gaia's children, you know, humans, from thriving, from leaving the planet, or going to other worlds and moons entirely? Seems really sus to me, man. But the cherry on top here, Luna, the goddess representing the moon, also helped Jupiter during the big fight with Gaia. According to myth, as Gaia was searching for an herb to make the giants immortal, Luna didn't shine any light, so Gaia couldn't find it. Luna then tried to destroy the herb themselves to stop Gaia from finding it forever. I don't know about you, but again, thematically, sounds a lot like what's happening here in the series. Humanity, life, civilization, whatever you want to call it, that was like the herb that Gaia was looking for, and the moon tried to snuff it out, trying to stop Gaia, or the Earth, from really being able to fight back. So here's what I'm thinking. Like, we know that the ancient humans saw our original moon being destroyed and then replaced by the awakened moon. We also know that there's a weird psychic or magical or radioactive effect that can infect the minds of humans, even if the planets aren't necessarily awake yet. Like, sure, the moon juice seems to directly infect people, maybe, again, it's very unclear, but remember that kid from episode 2? Or the doomsayer in New York? Or the cult in Namibia? They absolutely knew about the moon being awake, or were infected by the moon phase syndrome before the action of the series got started, before the moon juice was on the planet. Well, let's combine these two ideas. That would mean that this ancient event that caused widespread devastation almost certainly lived on in the cultural subconscious genesis of humanity. And in fact, that could be the source of a lot of the mythology that inspired the names of the planets in the first place. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Oh, and just one last thing before we move on here, but when I was first researching this episode, I was wondering if we were going to continue to see the other planets wake up. After all, Mars, Venus, and Mercury, as well as a lot of the other dwarf planets like Ceres and Pluto, are also named after these mythological figures. But that doesn't appear to be the case. In episode 7, which released like in the middle of us researching this, we see what looks like the first infection of the solar system in 10,000 BC. And though we see the big tentacle monsters interacting with the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, we fly by Mars and distinctly see that it's alone. No tentacle monster in sight, so I guess those planets would be like on our side, or neutral at the very least. If I were to guess a reason, well, the tentacle monsters only seem interested in 2 types of planets so far based on what we've seen. Gas giants like Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and the unnamed planet we see halfway through episode 7, it's way too big to be rocky. Or planets with life, like Earth, or the one we see at the end of episode 7.
Scans are reading faint signs of biological life.
They only care about gas giants and planets with life. And those scientists believe there was a chance that both Mars and Venus were once capable of supporting life. In fact, there was like a big news story that came out like the day before I'm recording this that they might have found a lot of evidence for life on Mars, and that is a world-changing piece of information that would have been hundreds of millions, if not even billions of years ago, way before the tentacle creatures came to the solar system in 10,000 BC. So they likely didn't give Mars, Venus, and Mercury a second thought because of that. But okay, all of that is cool, but it doesn't really tell us about what might be the biggest and most dangerous mystery left here in the series. What's up with the tentacle monsters? The giant hands that emerged from the void and plucked these planets away from Earth? And why are they doing this? Again, there aren't firm answers quite yet, and Mr. Friend is uploading more of this series as we speak. But I think we can get an idea by, again, looking at our mythological parallels. First up, the tentacle monsters. So we see these guys create moons with our very own eyes. It's kind of like their defining feature, and we've already noted that our moon is associated with the goddess Luna, who herself had creators. In myth, Luna was created by the titans Hyperion and Theia. A little tangent here, but in the real world, the leading theory about the creation of our moon is the Great Impact Hypothesis, which suggested that another planet collided with Earth and the debris created the moon. That planet was called Theia. Astronomers are real big nerds, and I love it. Anyway, in the myths, Hyperion was also imprisoned by Jupiter when he overthrew the Titans with the help of Gaia, and Hyperion wasn't too happy about that. This could explain why the tentacle monsters are so interested in planets like Earth that have life. It's representative of any grudge that Hyperion might hold against someone like Gaia. But here's the thing, Hyperion didn't only create Luna, he was also responsible for the creation of Sol, the representation of our sun. If the tentacle monsters represent Hyperion, that could also explain why they're so interested in the gas giants. Now, this is incredibly simplified, but the biggest difference between a gas giant like Jupiter and a star like our sun is mostly just the amount of stuff in it, the amount of gases and other elements clumped together. So basically, if Jupiter just had more stuff in it, it would have become a star. Well, think about this. We also see that the gas giants wake up in this universe thanks to the tentacle monsters. So what if the end goal of these tentacle monsters has to do with stars, like Sol, our sun? That's a way for the series to get even bigger, right? Have them wake up our sun just like they did the gas giants. So that potentially explains the tentacle monsters, but, well, what about the other giant hand-shaped elephant in the room? This is clearly not the same thing because it's, well, a hand, not a tentacle. At first, I wondered if they were connected in some way, like maybe the tentacle monsters are preparing the planets for harvest or something like that. But the more we've seen and the more I've sat and thought about it, I get the vibe that these things are at odds with one another. Like, the hands seem to pluck the gas giants out of space without the intervention of the monsters. They just kind of like appear and take them, you know, instead of having the tentacle monsters like prepare them. And they don't travel the same way. In episode 7, the monster just floats away at high speeds instead of using the sort of void portal that the hands create. So what's up with these things? Is there something in mythology even more powerful than the Olympians, Titans, and primordial gods? Well, you know I wouldn't ask the hypothetical question if I didn't have an answer. See, though beings like Gaia and Uranus were some of the first primordial gods, they still came from something else. They weren't the first beings in the universe in these myths. And the thing that came before? Chaos. Yeah, like the literal concept of chaos. In Greek and Roman
Same.
mythology, this was a personified character, the very first being that existed in the universe who created the other primordial gods. It was basically like the forerunner for everything, and that kind of seems like it could be a giant hand that plucks entire planets out of the sky like they're nothing, right? But the thing that really drives this home, that really cements this connection for me, well, in Greek, chaos means gaping or vast void. Yeah, void. Almost like a portal
Yeah,
to
kinda like
another
those
place.
portals.
Exactly like the voids we see these hands coming out of. So what does this mean? Does having these chaotic beings come in and pluck the planets out of the sky mean that Earth and humanity have a powerful ally? Well, not necessarily. In the mythology,
Maybe.
chaos doesn't really have an agenda. It simply is. It's a void without order, so much so that it's often described as a middle ground between the Earth and Tartarus. That's the realm that the Titans were banished to. Whatever
Yes.
these beings are doing here, it's certainly not because it wants to help us. Like, it probably doesn't even know that the humans and Friend Industries even exist. No. Instead, if anything, if these chaotic beings end up saving humanity, it won't be on purpose. It'll be a side effect of whatever bigger plans it has going on, while also dooming the Earth to a bunch of unexpected fallout. Which, hey, at least it kind of fits the satirical tone the series has taken, doesn't it? But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut.
Man, okay, yeah, that kind of just ended up being a mythology lesson. Nice. That's kind of what I was expecting this to be anyways. Yeah, I watched this series whenever it was coming out, whenever I wasn't capable of making videos for a good bit. And I feel like it was pretty good. I was expecting mythology, honestly. As always, good video. And as always, like and subscribe to the Film Theorist and myself. Have a good day, night, and afternoon, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.